So first off, let me say thank you for everyone that's out here. And the session that I've got today it's a framework for collaboration between tech and teachers in K-12. My name's Randy Saeks. I'm the network manager for Glencoe School District 35. And as I talk about my background, we can all do a fun thing, like maybe test some conference wireless if we want. I have some slides and content in addition to the slides that'll be posted under resources for some of the graphics later on. So that way, if you want to get these later, you can get them later. If you're wondering what that URL is, it's page_ID. So feel free to grab those. It's actually going to be a pages version of the content, because my hope is you can kind of walk away, take some of this framework, take some of this idea, story time, and make it your own and suit it to your organization, because obviously not all places are the same, and we want to make sure we can all do that. So my environment, we're K-8 education, 1,200 students, 200 staff. We're in grade level buildings. So for us, that means kindergartners and second graders are in one building, third and fourth in another, and then our fifth to eighth graders, collaborate, work oh so nicely in middle school all together. We're iPads one-to-one for everybody, so that means our students, our teachers, our administrators, and our teacher associates. So anyone that's going to be working in that whole educational realm of supporting students has the same tools. That was really important for us. We wanted to make sure there was equity and equality, and make sure that if someone in a first grade classroom needs to help out the students, they actually have that same device. Same thing works with our laptops, MacBook Airs for all of our teachers, administrators, tech staff, and we all use the same devices, which I kind of love, because it means if I'm experiencing an issue because my downloads folder has 400 things, most likely our teachers are going to have that. So it lets me kind of live in their lane a little bit and be able to kind of work with that. I'm going to try to use 3 polls through Slido, so there's going to eventually be some QR codes that may or may not appear. If they don't, we can just kind of do it, by a show of hands, get some of that feedback. But one of the things I'd love to do is for everyone here, take 30 seconds, and this is, that teacher, that educator thing. Look somebody next to you, give your background, who you are, your environment a little bit. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. Say hello to someone you don't know. There we go. And I know I said 30 seconds. That was a little bit longer. So you might be wondering, this is a conference where I want to listen to this session. Well, why the heck did he just do that? Why did he make us talk to each other? And this was actually something I thought of when I saw the schedule. It's the second session of the conference, and there's colleagues that are in the same room, in your same environment. If you have things in common, if you learn something in that 30 seconds or a minute, there's lunch, there's dinner, there's some of the social activities. Those are great opportunities to build some new connections. There's, 25, 30 of us in here. Maybe that'll mean we don't have to reinvent 25 wheels to a problem. Maybe only 5 are needed, and we can all kind of repurpose those. This whole existential question, why are we here? And, not at Penn State, but specifically this session, hopefully something called out to you, and at least for me, when I was putting the content together, it was looking at kind of changing this issue. Very often I was finding tech folks, teacher folks, kind of being our own little islands. We're doing our own things. We don't always communicate effectively back and forth. And some of the times it's a little bit easier if we can build these bridges to connect islands rather than be our own isolated one. And then you get thinking a little bit more, well, where do we want to be? And I don't think we've heard it in a playlist yet, but I'm sure there's going to be a Fleetwood Mac reference of going your own way with kind of this example. And what I looked at when I was putting this together is, tech teachers in schools, we work together, we kind of do our own thing, and we have this little middle sliver that's a great overlap. And I thought about an activity. Has anyone ever done one of those where it's write how to construct a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And tech folks will do it one way, teachers will go through it another way, and what you find out is somehow now like the jelly's on top of the peanut butter, but that's on top of the bread, and then like the other piece of bread is still in the bag somehow. And what that made me think about is if we have our different starting points and kind of come to that middle area, we're still not always on the same page, even though we're still trying to achieve the same thing. And that's where I thought, this is actually a better example. Rather than have everybody kind of do their own thing, not work well with one another, what if we start and take that peanut butter and jelly example and say, what if we all just made that sandwich together? Let's have that common language. We can check for understanding. We can make sure everybody's at the same point. And then we have a really good finished product. That also lets us take that, we work together, establish those common goals, and then we go out to our areas of expertise. Since I'm an optimist, I kind of say that, yes, we have things in the way. I viewed them as speed bumps. Did anybody else drive here? Some folks drove. Did anyone see like road closed signs, roadblocks? So I thought this is a little bit more optimistic. And it also made me think a little bit about changing organizations and trying to change culture and maybe even having these conversations for the first time. It's really hard at a big level to make that change. And instead, we can kind of have, small progress. We can change perceptions. We can go ahead and build relationships. And then we can use this momentum to kind of, work our way over the speed bump. Obviously, things get in the way all the time. There's misunderstanding that can happen, lack of communication. As I was putting these slides together in these bullet points, I was starting to think of what are stories I can tell for some of these. And a great lack of communication example is one of the operating system updates. You send out an update. Folks are now going to system preferences, system settings to change their display arrangement. And, oh, this looks way different than before. Well, if I don't communicate out that update's happening, people are going to get frustrated. Kind of in a similar way, if there's unaligned goals, obviously that's not going to work out. Looking back at that island of responsibility, if we have unaligned goals, so let's say tech folks are really focused on making sure everything is secure, safe, student data is protected, that's going to usually mean you don't have great usability. And if you're unaligned with your goals and you're saying we're focused on security and we're focused just on instruction, it doesn't also really work out that well. So if we take those opportunities to kind of reduce those misunderstandings, we can, hopefully fix all of these. And we're going to hope that this first opportunity to get a poll question displays. I don't know if it will. It did. So if you haven't used Slido, this is just one of those fun things where if you could pick one word, if you want to contribute to this to describe your biggest frustration when it comes to things in your way. What are they? And hopefully if we see some answers pop up there, you can kind of be like, oh yeah, I like that one too, and you can toss that word in. So we're gonna see if the world of tech actually plays along. I see one participant is typing, so that's a great sign. 4, excellent. Distraction, that's a good one. Ooh, Burger King. That's 2 words. No, I'm kidding. So hopefully, kind of looking at this that we might see, maybe some of these also resonate with you. It's like, hey, if we're thinking about who's in the room, we have backgrounds, we have understanding. We also are seeing some now of the same frustrations emerge. Cool. Hey, that actually kind of worked. That was awesome. So how do we start? Has anyone ever had a really big problem or too many chores to do and you just kind of look at like, I've been traveling for 2 weeks, there's a lot of laundry, why should I even start? Motivation, sometimes getting started is really hard. And what I found incredibly helpful was rather than starting with here's all the stuff I want to do, it's actually trying to find my motivators. And there's an author, Simon Sinek, if anyone's familiar, has a great concept of describing your why. And I saved you all some time. I summarized it a little bit. It's the contributions that you make to the world, encompassing your personal and your professional purpose to define who we are as individuals. It's a lot to unpack. I feel like that's a session all for next year. So I've got that conference idea of what that could look like. But he has an activity in here that it's you find a very good friend. They can't be a partner. They can't be a spouse or a sibling because they're just a little bit too close. And you turn to that person and you say, why are we friends? And you're going to get a crazy look like, well, I don't know. Why are you asking me that? And you kind of have to push a little bit. You have to persist. And eventually it kind of goes to, well, I don't know. You're funny. You're smart. You're honest. And then you can kind of pause and feel good and then say, well, that describes a good friend. Why would, if I called you at 3 a.m. with an emergency, why would you drop everything and help me? Ooh. Again, you have to keep pushing sometimes a little bit, and eventually what they end up doing is they stop thinking about the answer of traits and they start describing themselves. And it's a really cool thing because you'll hear something maybe that sounds like, I don't know, I can sit in a room with you, I can have dinner, I can have drinks after a really tough day at work, and I just feel at ease. And okay, well that's actually why it's me, because when I think of my friends and my colleagues and individuals that I'm close with, I know that there's different people I'm going to reach out because they have different strengths. And that was kind of a fun thing that popped in here. Having that why, having that motivator, it's a great way to get moving. And then the next question that I want to get, what part of your job brings you the most pride? I think this one lets you type a little bit longer, more than just one word, although we'll see what comes out here. Solving problems. And what's so fun is I look at these answers, and when I did this activity and thought through it, I'm like, okay, well, the reason why I like helping others and solving problems and making a difference is because, it relates to this why that I've kind of worked through. Oh, those are awesome. And hopefully, as you see some of these answers, again, that background, the environment, frustrations, now we're seeing, hey, everybody in this room, here's the stuff that makes us prideful. Again, if you look at some of those answers, you can kind of think about that why a little bit. That's the content that's kind of those soft skills, those soft, mushy skills a little bit. So we've gotten all that. We've maybe found our little bit of a motivator. We found the thing that pushes us a little bit, that we can get over those speed bumps. So how do we get started? Has anyone ever worked through the Apple Learning Coach program? Has anyone used the Apple Education Community? So check those out, education.apple.com. This entire program is a lot more instructional focused. I went through it because I actually wanted to have a better understanding of what's going on in our classrooms. And in the coaching cycle, in the cycles of iteration that Apple goes through, there's 4 phases. We're inquiring, we're planning, acting, and then reflecting. And I thought, well, that's great in a classroom environment because that's actually what we do. It's how we lesson plan, it's how we work with our students. What does that actually look like on the tech side of things? Because it looks very, very different. And I kind of put this entire thing together. It actually came out of through the Apple Distinguished Educator Program. I was working with teachers and just hearing frustrations, hearing a lot about, I wish I could do this thing in my classroom, but tech doesn't let us, all sorts of roadblocks or speed bumps, depending upon your perspective. And thought, well, what if we take that coaching cycle that's focused on instructional tech and we maybe put it around infrastructure a little bit, leadership, how do we get things done, the nuts and bolts side of things. So I took that and I adapted it to kind of make the same thing, and the content that's linked in here actually focuses on like a 12-month cycle of different activities through different months to work through, and that's kind of where this framework comes in. It's the things, we're doing now, things we've seen recently, what we're going to be planning, and the content that's in there. There should be a link to, again, that Pages version of it on the link, and I'll keep that up at the end so you can grab it, so you can, if you want to make this your own, please do. It goes January to December. I thought for all of us, what if we started in June? Because that was only a couple of weeks ago. And this is kind of modeled after, I've been in school since 2001 doing everything tech under the sun pretty much. And this was, well, let's reflect on it. Let's maybe make something. Let's put some great content together. So this guide, this framework, it's focused around planning things, asking, acting, reflecting, to kind of build all of those in to a fun, hopefully good way to support our schools a little bit more. And I wanted to, like I said, start in June because that's right with us. We all probably recently remember, hey, the developer conference happened. Everyone's eager to test out new OS releases. Well, in schools, we plan for that too. Obviously, some of the times we find out testing vendors are a little slow to do the same thing. But on our tech side of things, we can control this. And this has some links in here. So if you haven't been working with testing new builds out, use the Appleseed for IT program. There's test plans, and there's a tool in there called the Mac Evaluation Utility, which is a great little download that'll do things like, how are we doing on network? Are we blocking any ports that we might need? Reviewing WWC content. Great example of that is the What's New for Managing Apple Devices session. So if you're wondering what's going to be happening with iPadOS 18, iOS, macOS, Sequoia, great place to start. And I always use June as a time to just make sure content caches are set up correctly. Are there any infrastructure changes that are going on? We ask people, hey, do you want to test things out for us? Do you want to give us some feedback? Because I can only make sure stuff works. I don't really know how you're going to use it in a classroom. And if you're doing that, do you also maybe want a device that can be a student so that you can take these with you? You can kind of play some games, see how they all work out. And then we kind of act with this and we say, well, we want to get feedback. So if we're doing all of this, maybe we want to create a space in free form so individuals can put content together. You can use numbers if you wanted to kind of have a spreadsheet pre-populated with drop-downs. People can use clips. What we actually found out to be the most beneficial is just using Control Center, doing a screen recording and having somebody for 2 minutes record their screen, talk through a process. Thinking back to that peanut butter and jelly example, being able to see and have somebody describe the exact thing that they're working with is a great way to find out what are the hurdles, what are the confusions, what's the process. Maybe there's an option that's being scrolled past. I've learned things from our teachers too. And that's one of the things I always love is with all of these saying, I want to make sure people know I learned from you. Because there's a little thing that's nice about being vulnerable and saying someone else is an expert at this, I want to get more information. Hey, July, that's actually where we are right now. So the things that we're doing in our organization, we're looking at how do we distribute devices to students? Who's going to do initial training for new staff? What's the timeline for teachers, for example, that are new hires that might need their devices soon? You don't want to give a teacher a device, 2 weeks before the start of the school year. Teachers are working on team meetings. They're building content over the summer if they're new. We also use this time to kind of look and reflect back on what went well at the end of the school year, what didn't. And for us, we collect, 1,200 devices. We have a summer exploration program that's a lot more exploratory. So there's things like robotics, there's chess, there's, the summer school newspaper that the kids work on. It's not too academic. And we have some courses that are in there that are focused on coding, robotics, as I mentioned. Those kids need devices. So when we collect them at the end of the year, we find, hey, kindergarten through 4th grade, it works great because the kids walk on down with their classroom. They put them in a pile by class. They walk back up on the last day of school, and they go out to field day. What we found out in our 5 through 8 school, even though we had a spreadsheet with people's names highlighted that needed devices, and even though there was this bin over to the side that was marked devices for summer explorations, guess what didn't happen? And that kind of goes back to that, those hurdles that we run into. Is it lack of communication? Is it lack of understanding? Whichever one, it's not a big deal. When you have 500 devices and you're trying to find 30, you're almost going through every device. Yes, you can use loss mode, and you can have that, but then now you're listening for 30 beeping devices in a pile of 500, and it's almost the exact same thing. So that's one of those spots in here with that coaching cycle being this entire, process that's always ongoing. I wanted to build this so I could take this example from this month, jot it down, and now I can start having that as something I can plan for in the future school year. In August, we kind of start the school year with some things that are focused around making sure a teacher's comfortable. It's super easy to pop into a classroom and spend 30 seconds. I'm like, hey, I see, great, the classroom theme is national parks this year. I absolutely love it. Did you go to one of them? What was your favorite? Oh, by the way, we implemented a new intranet system this year. Have you been able to log into it? That 30 seconds of a quick little connection, a quick check-in on something that's new is a great way to start building some of those bridges that are out there. We started adopting the third bullet point on this one, letting people know the next time we're going to be in the building, especially the start of the school year. Teachers are planning classrooms. There's 38 meetings in the day. There's 2 minutes in between for lunch somehow. I don't know how teachers can consistently eat lunch in 2 minutes. It's an amazing skill. But being able to just say, I know you're busy. If you see an issue, jot it down, and we'll be in the library on Tuesday before school starts, or Tuesday, it's 3 days before school starts. Drop on in, let us know. We kind of ask some of these support questions. Are there training materials we need to create and share with staff? One of the things we'll look at is some of the times we find out, we've been noticing ever since this software update, our interactive whiteboards sometimes just drop their interactive connection. And it's really easy on the tech front to say, just restart your computer, it takes 30 seconds. If I was going to try to restart my computer right now with a presentation up in this instructional setting, sure, I could probably get that done in about a minute, minute and a half. We're all adults. We're probably going to get and stay on focus. When it's a bunch of kids, that moment happens, and suddenly that thing that takes, 3 minutes actually takes 8 minutes, because now I have to put another activity together, and now I need to refocus the students. So in that case, we heard that. We thought about how do we raise awareness. And then we said, well, if it's just unloading and loading a launch agent, what if we just put that into self-service and told any of our teachers, if this thing happens, go here, click this, you're going to see the pen tray light up, and then the light's going to go solid green. And what's cool about that is I took an issue that we discovered over the summer, we found out about, we brainstormed some ways to work through it, and we kind of looked at it from that teacher lens a little bit and said, we can make your life easier. Because on the tech front, it's usually not a lot of work, especially using MDMs and config profiles to make those changes. It's a lot nicer when you have and here's why we want to do it. So September, do people feel comfortable with the tech in place? Have we shared relevant information? And then acting, and what I love about this is my first cycle of actually going through this entire content. I put this book together, the content over the course of a year, reflecting back. Now I'm refining it. So I'm thinking, September, maybe professional development isn't the best time for us. Maybe that should be something that happens in August. But what we found out this last year is looking at, do classroom teachers feel comfortable with the tech in their spaces? Well, when you're renovating 34 classrooms and the day that teachers can get back into their space is the first day of Teacher Institute days, does anyone want to guess what the answer to that is? It was definitely, no, I don't feel comfortable with what's in my room because I just finally started moving in. I don't even want to know about the new tech right now. I just want to get my materials, my desk set back up. So we reflected on that one and changed some things around. But we also took that time to look at professional development opportunities. And for us, we use Apple Classroom and Schoolwork often. And what we found out is a great way to introduce Classroom. A lot of folks enjoy using it because you can view what's on students' iPad screens. And we wanted to shift that from, let's not have this be making sure the students are on task and classroom management. Let's switch this to an instructional use, but still achieve the same goal of you can view screens. But I don't want to sell it as you're viewing screens. So we took a quick little numbers document. We put instructions. There were 3 tabs being used. We put instructions in a red box, a yellow box, and a green box. 15 minutes for everyone to work through this activity. About 7.5 minutes in, we used the great, the lock button. So all the teacher iPads locked, and you kind of get the what's going on. Hey, we're going to show you that now if I'm going to turn this off, I'm going to look at your screens, we're going to project them up here. So we gave folks a little bit of opportunity if they were off task to kind of jump back in. Had a 30-second countdown, and what we showed them was now by viewing your thumbnails of all of your screens, I can really quickly see 7 of you are still on the red tab, 4 of you are on the green tab, and 12 of you are on yellow. I can now use that as a teacher to pop over to some of the kids that might be still on the red tab and say, oh, do you need any help with what you're doing? In a similar way, if I have a really collaborative classroom space, we could pick some of those students, check to make sure everyone that's actually done on the green tab, oh, do you want to go help the kids over here? So it was a really cool way to kind of shift that lens of it's going to let you see what the students are doing, but we really want to focus it on how that is an instructional use in your classroom and a lot less of the let's get you in trouble. And then schoolwork, this was a really fun one. One of our Spanish teacher that's at our kindergarten through 2nd grade building. The kids do a little immersion activity once a week. And we were thinking and brainstorming, all right, the kids want to put together alphabet books in Spanish, but we're going to do it by class. We want it to be collaborative because we don't want to have every student airdrop things to the teacher. How do we do that? Because they're 1st graders. And we used Schoolwork, so the teacher built a keynote, A to Z, put it as a material for the class, and then shared it out with the settings so that everybody could collaborate. All the students went into the Schoolwork app, they grabbed the document, they were collaborating. They went under G and they put in gato, and they went under P and they put down perro. And all of these fun activities, clip art came in, and it was really cool to see a teacher that was willing to take that chance of, I don't know if this is going to work, let's try it. And we took that as a great success. And then this course, when it comes back up over the summer, they're leading. So we were able to take that individual, have them now be an advocate for us and say, hey, you're doing this cool thing with your students. Showcase it with us. Show other teachers and other staff members what you can do with it. October. What do we do about October? We think about what popped up to start the school year. And this might have even been something that sometimes happens at conferences. We see it with software update releases. Was it 17.6? One of the new betas came out. It's great when you can prep a bunch of devices. It's great when they're all ready at the start of the school year. 3 weeks before the school year starts, you plug them into the classroom, you turn them all off, and then they're ready to go for the first day of school. The challenge is apps update, especially when devices are turned off for 3 weeks. And it's never really a big deal to have an app or 2 update on your personal device. When you're in a classroom and there's a bunch of, let's say, 2nd graders or even 8th graders, and the teacher wants to jump into an activity to start the day, it's like the 2nd day of school, all right, turn on your iPads, open up Chrome. Well, there's 20 kids in the room. 4 have updated Chrome already, so 4 students are ready to go. Another 10, it's kind of slowly downloading, so you get the little picture, but the kids now have tapped on it to launch Chrome, and now it's paused the download. And maybe they resume it, maybe they don't. And then there's a handful of other students that have Chrome open, and then the pop-up comes by saying, oh, MDM wants to update this. Well, we kind of said, you know what, it's great everything was ready. The change that we want to make from this as we kind of reflect back is let's set those devices up. We can do it the 3 weeks ahead of time. Just leave them plugged into power. Don't shut them down. They're going to still charge. They're going to get updates in the background. It's going to make that first day a little bit nicer. So one of the other things I have in here is a lot of these slides, they have these blank areas. And the hope here is these are things that you might be able to fill in on your own. Again, the hope is that you can kind of take this, make it be your own, shift it around a little bit. November, one of the things we do is we pop into classrooms. I love going into classrooms and actually seeing what are some of the ways that our teachers and students are using the tech that we're supporting to show their learning. And the amount of things I have learned with app smashing and how you take a keynote into clips, into a screen recording with then keynote again to narrate the live video background. It's like, how are you? I don't know how to do this. This is awesome. But we built this little check sheet together. Are there any successes or challenges that we observed? How can we make things easier? And things I'm trying to encourage more often and include in these kinds of frameworks and ideas are, when we look back at that question about what was something that brings you pride, having a question that you can have in here of, I'm in this classroom and I feel like this thing I did or we did or our team accomplished, it had a positive impact in the classroom. I want to jot that down. So when we were in one of these classrooms, I was watching this, and one of the challenges that I saw there was, all right, students are able to AirPlay. It's not a tough thing to do. I think this has happened to me at least once a month. You go to your AirPlay menu, you pick the Apple TV, and as soon as you're starting to click, one more device pops up, and then suddenly you're like, I don't want to be in room 208. I want to be in room 207. So we saw that and then remembered, well, wait, if these teachers and our staff were pushing Apple Classroom, you know we can use the AirPlay option. And the teacher from their iPad who might already be mirrored on the Apple TV can just hit the button and AirPlay that student's device up there for them. Not a big challenge, but it was one of those things that when we heard that and saw it, we thought, this is an easy win. And then reflecting back upon some of these ideas, what can we do to make things a little bit better? For us, December is winter break. I'm in the Chicagoland area, so that also means it starts getting a little snowy, it gets a little dreary, and it's no fun to be outside. So we hope that our students do not take the devices with them outside over our winter break time. But we know some of our students take them home with them. Our 5th through 8th graders, they take their devices home. K-4, they leave them in school unless there's, pandemics. Then everybody takes their devices home. But we look at, winter break is typically that spot. Are there any big updates that we have? If not, what are the deferrals looking like? So if we're pausing software updates for a period of time, what's our timer set? When was the last OS released? Does that maybe mean devices might automatically start updating over a 2-week window? Or do we want to send an update out because the school year's worked well, we've discovered our issues, and we found out what works and what doesn't? Kind of go through the same thing. We're going to ask some of these questions that if we do plan software updates, are there significant changes that we need to worry about? Are there any new features that are impactful to instruction? And every so often you get a cool update, like maybe a calculator on the iPad coming soon. We're working with that and saying, ooh, when that update occurs, we're probably not going to run iPad OS the first day of school because it's probably not going to be released. What is it, mid-September to mid-October is typically when those big releases happen. Well, we don't want to update it right away. So maybe now this thing is something that we're going to plan into December, and we want to make sure people know about new features. Since January is a little cold and a little depressing, that kind of seems like a great opportunity to just be like, hey, how's everyone doing? Like, are we overwhelmed? Is there anything we want to improve upon? What can we do differently? For us, when we did this, one of the questions that came out of this was, we don't really have enough time to do professional development. And it wasn't classes, it wasn't conferences, it was those little self-paced modules out there where like, I can dive into this for 1 hour during the day, learn a new skill, get better at this. And tech-wise, we were finding, can't be uninterrupted for an hour. A phone rings, a chat message pops up, someone pops by a door, and it's just tough. Like, I love when people are successful with tech. I love problem solving. It was really hard even for me to say, like, I'm trying to do PD. Can I just have an hour? So with this question, we said, you know, a way we can fix that is if there's something you want to do, block the time out on the calendar, actually like take your time to get better and improve as an employee. And if you need to go book like a conference room somewhere else where no one will find you, feel free to go and do that. And then this one's great as a team to do. Month prior, something that maybe you saw impactful, share it out as a team. The other thing I've absolutely loved about creating this content, if there's ever moments that arise, hey, what did you do this year? You know, like evaluations come up. If you actually work through this and you start writing these reflections down and all of these changes and, you know, kind of work with this content, you have a great product that you can bring to like an evaluation session and share out, well, I felt we were impactful this way, here's how a change impacted the classroom, and it shows a really great connection from that tech lane to the teachers. February, we look at supplies. Hey, what do we need? Again, kind of built out a little chart that just has areas of content. Is it iPads, laptops, AV, repair, other? You can make it whatever you would like it to be. But like we found with AV, do we have enough of Apple TV remotes and spares? Yeah, we have all that, but you know, the new interactive whiteboards we got have USB-C. What if instead of having our teachers use a USB-C dongle, an HDMI cable, a spot to plug in their power, and then a USB-A cable for connectivity, what if we tried maybe just one USB-C cable that can go to the board and it actually can charge the laptop at the same time? Small little changes. People love just having one cable. The other thing it meant for us is now our teachers had, you know, we'd always get requests, can I get another power adapter for home? Suddenly we solved that because there was now the power adapter that was oddly the interactive flat panel and the power adapter that if you want to leave it at home, we don't care. We have given it to you. Just make sure you have everything that you need. February, we asked teachers, students about like logistics of the classroom. At this point, one of the things we can think about is it's probably 110, 120 days of school. Has anyone ever had a collection of USB cables that get unplugged and plugged in 4 times a day? And then that happens for 110 days. Does anybody ever want to untangle that ball of cabling? So we hear questions like that of, can we maybe change how we're storing or charging devices? And actually the second bullet point here, do students have challenges finding apps on their device? This was a question that kind of came out of nowhere. We're like, well, what if we just ask this? And what I love about this question is it kind of shows here's how this entire cycle can work out with an actual deliverable. So with that one in mind, we asked that question in addition to things like cables, how are kids with passwords? And you know what? We took answers from February, and actually we received feedback from that question in February that we weren't even really thinking about. Hey, are people having issues accessing apps? And we kind of talked to grade level teams. We found out, you know, 5th to 8th grade, kids are solid. They're putting the apps wherever they want them to be. Some of the times I've learned kids organize apps into folders by the icon color. Blew my mind. Or they just suddenly do alphabetical order, so it's like red, orange, yellow, green, purple, with the apps that are of the highest alphabetical order. Systems that work, and you know what? If you have it and it's working, keep it. But we found out grades kindergarten through 4th, sometimes it's a little bit challenging for students to find apps, especially if we really think about, you know, the start of a school year. So we heard that and we thought, well, okay, let's think about that. Let's follow up. You know, we've asked this question, we've now acted, we've gotten the data. How do we do something with it? This was also a great time. We kind of look at what other changes might we need. And then suddenly it's already April. it's weird how fast, like it seems like a school year is really slow for the first month or two. And then all of a sudden you're at like mid-May planning your how to end the school year meetings. So then April rolls around, and again, this is February, March, April. This is a little screenshot of one of our second grade iPads, just how it looks out of the box. It's like if you try to install apps with MDM, they're not always in the same order, which again, if you're trying to work with students that are kindergarten, first grade, second grade, can everybody read the app name? And we thought, well, we can simplify this. What if instead of having it look like this, we took apps that we just don't use at these grade levels? I don't think that many kids in first grade are doing anything with stocks. And we can just put those into a different folder. So if we do have a financial, literacy class for our first graders and they have to go look up their 5 favorite stocks, it's here. Obviously, we could use Apple Classroom to kind of launch that, but we said, well, what if we did this instead? And here's the apps that like second grade primarily uses. Measure's always a fun one. And then let's put some web clips on the dock. Let's make it easier and make it simpler. The part that we also loved about this is because we had teachers, we had teacher associates, they all have the same devices. Anyone can help out, and it's super easy to say, on the 3rd row, go to the second icon to open Safari. Or in the top right corner, look for the big blue icon that looks like, that says Keynote underneath it. We're going to start a presentation. And being able to guide it that way, incredibly helpful. Yes. Oh, hold on. We have to use the official catch box.
Depending on your MDM, in regard to what apps you want to keep and not have on, say, the home screen or wherever, depending on your MDM, you can create a restrictions policy that will actually hide.
Yep.
And of course, all of the default apps from Apple are listed, at least in Jamf Pro they are, because that's what we use. And you just go through and just check them off and say, nope, don't want to see that, don't want to see that. Sadly, you can't do it with widgets.
That's
and we are desperately hoping that changes.
Yes, there have been a lot of those fun things. We kind of put the fun quotes in a block. Some quotes there of those fun challenges we run into. I know there's some ways that you can disallow widgets, but even then, it sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. Some of the apps, so like for example, that's a great mention there with like we don't have messages on here, we don't have these, but every so often there's some, we find, this new OS update, suddenly there's the Home app? Okay, well now I need to go and add the Home app to a restriction. Whack-a-mole, I kind of feels like what it's like. Here's the next change. So again, feedback cycles, we took this screenshot, we brought it into the meeting, said, hey, this is what it looks like if it's in alphabetical order. Does this work? And we, again, kind of kept innovating and cycling behind it. For us, May is when we look at device collection. Depending upon when everyone's school year ends, this may be something that's April. We just happen to end in June, so we say, hey, May, let's plan, do we need anything like schedules for people to turn things in? For students that are graduating or teachers that are leaving, do they know how to get their content? If we're trading devices in, so for us we do a lease cycle and then at 3 years we sell those devices off, we get a credit. We have to go through and release devices from Apple School Manager, or we find out that periodically this device that we sent in for repair, oops, somehow activation lock didn't get turned off. One of the great things that came from the developer conference is now in Apple School Manager, you have the ability to disable activation lock. So if you forget to do it from an MDM or any other way, you can do it with devices that are tied to your organization, which is awesome. And kind of in line with people leaving. One of the spots that pops into that is, okay, it's great. As a teacher, you know how to leave with your content. As a student, you know how to get your content. This year, and this is going to be something that we start kind of piloting and exploring, what do we do to retain content? We use Google Workspace, so one of those challenges becomes, you know that shared team meeting agenda that that person owned? Well, they got rid of content in their drive because, hey, I don't need this anymore. How do we keep that? So that's definitely going to be something that we kind of look at. One of the other fun things we started doing is we just thought it was easier at the end of a school year, teachers change classrooms. Stuff moves around. It's really easy to have, a dongle like this or some projector remotes that just get left in desk. And then that desk moves. And suddenly classroom here has 0 remotes. Classroom over here has 4 somehow. I don't know how they've all migrated to that one classroom, but let's make some Ziploc plastic bags. Let's put a room number on it. Toss all of your tech supplies in there, projector, Apple TV remotes, pens for your interactive whiteboard if you have that. Drop it off in the library before you leave on the last day of school. For us, in this, again, this like cycle of how it all works, one of these things that's done in May now works for us in August when we're checking into classrooms because we can take a cart, we can take Ziploc bags that have the AV equipment for the room, and you can kind of go down the hallway and get this classroom, drop things off, check in with the teacher, fire up the projectors or the TVs, the Apple TVs, make sure that everything is working. Yes?
In terms of the classroom peripherals, this is something that we've struggled with over the years. We're still refining it, but our current system is to use the Ziploc method.
It's great.
However, even in years past, when we had them taken to a central collection point, with the bags labeled and everything, somehow things still disappeared. What we have done the past couple of years is we have had the teachers gather. We will deliver the Ziploc bag. We will even label the Ziploc bag with the room number. Sometimes we will put a checklist of items in the bag, and the teacher is responsible for checking that item off as it goes in their bag. We then come by, when they're done at the end of the school year, we come by, we zip tie the bag to the projector mount or the television mount in their room so that when they come back, they know exactly where. All they have to do is look up at the projector and it's hanging from there and they can get it down. It doesn't get messed with. We still have to deal with summer camp because we do. I work for an independent school. We host summer camps. They float around. We don't always know their schedule. Hey, I got to show a movie to my kids in camp, blah, 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 so that sort of thing. So there's still some challenges that we're working through, but we have found zip tying the bag to the projector mount to be a huge help for us.
And when we did some of our classroom renovations last year, one of the things we said is, why don't we 3D print some Apple TV remote holders and a holder for actually like a projector and just put them onto the wall. So we have little caddies that are 3D printed pieces of plastic with, here's where your Apple remote goes. Of course, the challenge is when we refreshed, the remotes were a little bit thicker and they didn't fit anymore. So then we had to, of course, reprint all of those.
Velcro taping them to a surface in the classroom is helpful as well.
See, these are all great ideas, and that's what I love about like a session like this. If we're all in the same boat, I loved hearing, we use the Ziploc method too. Like, it works. So that's May. Like, that's the quick run through of this, and where I want to, kind of wrap this up and hand it off a little bit, kind of something hopefully you all can work with, is the slides are going to have this as a template. They're going to have an example. I mentioned that there's a Pages version of all of this content. So if you want to adopt it, modify it. Here's some templates. You can change the words behind it. If you want to have a different focus and kind of maybe take this framework and make it your own, you can do that. That little mini calendar is up there. So like, hey, if you want to have that little heads up view of how much stuff are we doing. When I was starting this, I had this for every month, and it's way too much. It was way too much content to try to put 4 things in every month with a focus and a reflection. And in addition to just doing our regular day-to-day jobs, that's overwhelming. So kind of where this goes, or what are my own reflections? Because as I mentioned, this is a framework I put together. It was lots of years of experience. It was a lot of teacher feedback to put it together. And what I learned from it, I only wanted to do 4, was that idea of designing with outcomes in mind. And that eventually leads to questions of like, well, what does success look like? And you can get a question from a teacher that asks something like, is there a camera on the iPad that my kids can use? Yes, there is. It's been there for a while. Or you can kind of ask that one little extra question about, yeah, there's a camera on there. What do you want to do with it? Oh, and then, the teacher kind of works through the idea in that case. I'm like, well, we want to go outside and we want to take pictures of some of the plants that are out there so we can identify it. Oh, okay, cool. What grade level are the students? Because a kindergartner and an 8th grader are going to have very different skill sets to do that. And if I can ask that question and then get those answers, and even on the tech realm, focusing on the what does success look like for this thing, it works really well. That example of dropping devices off in a classroom so that they're ready to go for the first day of school. Yep, the first round success looks like they are ready to go. And then you learn, ooh, all those app updates in 3 weeks hit. That's not great. We have caching servers, but 20 students, 10 app updates, and there's how many kids in a class, grade level, that's just a lot. So the success actually then looks like, oh, you want them to be able to use the internet on the first day. Okay, well now that's going to be a slightly different version because I want to make sure we're updated. Hopefully this is something that you'll see in some of the other sessions about ways to make change, and this isn't organizationally, it's how to recover from that oopsie moment. For example, if you're reconfiguring a router or a firewall and you reload it and you forget, oh, I didn't save it. Okay, so now all the changes I've done for the last 2 months, I need to figure out what they were. Okay, well, if my changes, my procedure, my practices, I'm going to take a backup before I restart it. I've solved that. The other fun one is if you find out it's a Thursday, it's 5 p.m., there's a school board meeting at 7, and oh, the certificate for our web filtering just expired. All right, well, how do we get that onto devices in 2 hours? Okay, we have a system in place that actually makes this easy to make these changes. So we can do that through our MDM. We can say when a device checks in, when a network state changes, push out the new certificate. I always go with this one. It's something I've tried to get a whole lot better at, and it's made a huge difference understanding the classroom environment. When you can kind of get some of those, here's how it impacts a teacher, it's a great way to frame problems. And then jotting down easy wins. So if you pop into a classroom, you see something really cool or frustrating that pops up, jot it down, keep it down in your own memory book. I have an entire desk drawer of any time I've gotten nice thank you notes, I just throw them in there. And it's a really great way for those days when someone is just not being really kind. You can kind of be like, you know what, I'm in a bad mood because this person yelled at me. All right, you know what, here's things where people have said a thank you, and it is kind of helpful. The other one that I would definitely say with some of these is an easy win of, did you know for Apple Classroom you can AirPlay a student's device as a teacher so that the kids can automatically get to it? You can send that out as an email, you can put it on whatever internal communication tools you have, and if you can put in there, well, in a classroom we saw this problem, discover how was it discovered? How did you find out about this issue? Here's the quick way to solve it. It's a nice way to kind of blend reflection, that connection that goes into a classroom. And then that's my reflection. So one of the things I wanted to wrap up before we hit Q&A with, and maybe it'll work. Okay, good. 3 for 3. I think I might not. There they go. Oh, boo. Well, Anyway, so this will be a everybody reflective activity for yourselves. What would be advice you would give past you? So that's kind of always a fun one to think about. You know, now that I think about this problem or this thing from years past, what would be a thing I would do? So with that, that gives us a little bit of time for some Q&A. I know there's the catch box that's going around, or if it's just a bit of, if you have stories, if there were slides up there where you saw a spot of, ooh, this would be a question we would actually maybe ask our staff, or a reflective activity we might do. If you have any of those ideas, feel free to share those on out. And as I mentioned, I'm going to leave that link up there, so if you want to grab the PDF version of this, or if you want to get the Pages version so you can actually modify it for your own organization, I would say go ahead and feel free.
Well, since I still have the catch box,
Someone else is going to have to ask a question soon, too.
I'm curious. I'm assuming because this is a session on K through 12 framework that everybody in here is working in K through 12. So as I stated earlier, I actually work for an independent school. So I have the luxury, I'm going to call it a luxury, of being on campus where everybody is and being potentially visible to everyone on campus. That being said, you know, we have about 375 faculty, and our difficulty is that connection between what we're doing in the background largely and what the teachers are actually doing in the classroom. So our school, I want to say it was about 8-9 years ago, brought in positions that we refer to as educational technologists. These are folks who are required to teach, but yet they are also responsible in some way for the technology aspects of the divisions they work in. So we have one for each lower, middle, and upper school. They have been invaluable because they are our eyes and ears to what's actually going on in the classroom, some of the frustrations. By the way, I love the idea of like doing a classroom audit.
It's fun.
Just during the year, get permission from a teacher. Yeah. Hey, can I sit in on your class? I want to see how things are going for you.
And like reiterate, like I'm not observing you.
Right.
I just want to see how the tech is used so I can have a better understanding.
Yeah, I love that. But I'm curious, even if you don't perhaps have an equivalent of what we call ed techs at your school, perhaps you have technology champions, as it were, in a division or a department. That you can go to, someone who's maybe a little more computer savvy, who can give you that feedback. I'm just curious, on a show of hands, how many of you actually have that kind of resource available at your school? Okay, so that's probably about half the folks in here. I mean, I would, for those who don't, and some of that may be simply because you know, you're not necessarily at an individual school like I am. You may be, you know, over a district. But I would encourage you in some way, shape, or form to somehow get a technology champion of some kind that you can reach out to on a fairly regular basis, or who will provide feedback to you as to how things are going, instead of waiting for a ticket to come in that something is going wrong consistently. They may be able to spot trends far faster than you through a ticketing system that you may be using.
Oh, good. The catch box is moving.
Okay, so I'll just add to that and say that one of the things that allows me to be, so I look at a ticket as like you missed, if it's for something ongoing in a classroom, I look at a ticket as you're not on top of what's going on in the classroom, right? Because something's happening. Because a teacher, and I think you guys know this, they don't submit tickets, right? Until it's gotten so bad that they have to. They will work through 50 different iterations of a workaround before they contact you. So if you're hearing nudges of things, I get students sometimes will say, hey, you know, the Wi-Fi in her room is really glitchy. You know, my favorite word, by the way, glitchy. So descriptive. But getting that, the students can get comfortable with you and they can tell you that stuff, and you start doing stuff, and all of a sudden the teachers are like, good Lord, he's a miracle worker. It's not. I just listen to somebody. And if you get that rapport with students or with teachers, it makes your life a lot easier.
I love those moments when it's like, you know, since the start of the school year, this problem has been happening. Like, it's February. Oh my God, like, I'm so sorry that you've been having that problem that long. Let's fix that, and please let us know about it
We
sooner.
haven't been online this week.
Right.
If I don't know there's
Right.
a problem.
I know I saw a hand back there, and I think there was one over on the right side.
So I'm also at an independent school, and I do have the benefit of having academic tech. It's primarily through our library department, and they tend to be a little bit more focused on the lower school. But something that I have had great success with is I'm a big fan of teach the trainer, right? So I find that the goal of that is to create this sort of harmonious cycle where there's the initial steering group or whoever comes on, they're familiar with the tech, you train the people, and then they in turn train the people who care about it or who are daily users of it, who can then figure out this is the specific use, this is the killer use case scenario, this is what I do. And so teachers are always overwhelmed. They're always, they're very collaborative. They talk amongst themselves. They figure out those workarounds, and then they only submit the tickets when it's like, hey, everything's at a standstill, and I needed this like a minute ago. What I've found is the people who submit those tickets, if they're receptive to it, work with them and whatever the administration structure is, to like, let's get you the training on this aspect. Let's develop it, because you don't want to just respond back when there's, a classroom crisis and say like, oh, RTFM. But you do want to empower them. And I personally have had success with my school's administration in terms of being able to protect that time for the teachers. Whether that's, we're going to dedicate, this is the what's the word, pedagogical expectations for these things, so that this is how you have to be accountable for your time. And it often gets them out of needing to do more mundane work. So by being able to identify those people who are the stakeholders, but also care a little bit more than the other people, and say like, hey, this could get you out of the, doing your mundane work. Somebody else can be on lunch duty or hats or whatever it is. And instead, you could become the person who goes for this. They are not always the department heads. I made that mistake early on. But oftentimes working with the department heads and saying, hey, we want to help empower you. We want to make sure you're getting better use out of this tool, and then letting them self-identify and then start that cycle is something that I personally have had great success with, and I think could apply for some of those other things that we covered today.
Well, and then those individuals become great advocates. So when there's something new, you can be like, hey, since you're doing this, do you want to try this other thing out? And ooh, you're going to share it with your colleagues. And good, it's a lot better when the communication is coming from peers than it is necessarily the tech guy.
Hey, Ben.
Cool. So I think the framework that you laid out, I think is fantastic. And I think all of us sitting in this room would probably say building that relationship between tech and your faculty is a huge priority, because basically most of the time, sometimes we sit back and say we're successful if we're invisible, right? If no one knows we're here, that means everything's working, right? But I guess my question would be, in your quest, kind of trying to establish these relationships with your faculty. I know you mentioned all these conversations that you're having, and in a lot of situations, there's times where, group faculty meetings, some may not be as responsive to speaking out to what their issue is, because that may show an issue on their part of understanding or whatever. What have you found to be the best way to begin building these? Are these one-to-one informal conversations? Are they meetings with one person and an entire team, like your entire department, to one teacher? Like, what is the best way that you have found in getting the granular response that you can be actionable on in this setting?
Oof, that's a good one. Seeing like that's one of those great questions, and like the reflective one, like, ooh, this is good for jotting down for our own organization. A lot of it is just like that informal, quick conversation, or if I've seen someone reports an issue of some kind, they actually do the ticket for it. I'll try to keep that in mind and then just periodically check in with them a lot more often after it's solved, and just kind of like, hey, is your board still working? Is this issue gone away? And you can kind of start then, like, hey, is there anything else you're having an issue with? And in some of those circumstances, like some of our staff meetings that we do when there's a training, we'll, from the tech lane, be more than happy to say something like, well, we were going to do it this way, and then, we took some of those ed tech folks, the champions that are willing to get it, we took some of that feedback, and, we found out our way wasn't the best. We adjusted it a little bit, and, we learned from you. And it takes some time to build those. We've also done, some of the times, we'll do anonymous surveys, just in general, like, hey, if there's anything that's cropping up that you want to let us know that you don't want to have it tied to be like, it's you, let us know. And some of the times we'll get those feedback items of, wow, 12 people are saying there's an issue with this. No one wants to say who it is. Let's just proactively put some professional development out there. Some of the times then you'll get one of the individuals who then was a little shy to say, hey, thanks for putting that together. So it's a lot of those little, those kind of small wins. It's working its way all the way around. I love it.
So I find that as much as I would love to collaborate and spend the time in classrooms and working with teachers and working with students, I don't have as much time as I would love to. So how do you, and obviously you're open to anybody, but how do you deal with either having to tell somebody, unfortunately, that's not something that's going to be possible, or the alternative of it is something that is possible and you want to do, but you just don't have the time to focus on it, and now a whole school year has gone by and you haven't even like touched the project?
One of the things I always do at the beginning of the school year, once all like the schedules start being laid out, I just pick a day when, like, cool, there's nothing going on meeting-wise that I need to worry about on Thursdays from 2 to 3. And I just block that time out for the entire year of like, this is going to be whatever flex time of something that I want to work on is. And then, again, the challenge for me is actually then sticking to that, saying like, no, I need to leave my office and I need to go focus on like this other thing for a little bit of time. And it has taken many years to actually like finally get that. And then where it starts working is if you can get the value behind it and then start showing the results for like, oh, here was this other cool thing that I did because I dedicated the time, and here's how some of our teachers have enjoyed it. Now you can sometimes push a little bit more towards like administration or management and say, hey, I've been doing this thing. Here's how it's helped out our teachers. Can we make it happen a little bit more often? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer might be, early on frustrations. I'm sure some of those are like, that's why I can't do it, that's why I can't do it, and that's why we don't have this position. Well, since there's about 7 minutes left, and I think lunch is the next thing, and I don't want to keep people from lunch. By the way, there's carrot cake. If you have not tried it, it's excellent. Is this anyone's first time here? This is like a show of hands. Okay, so that's checking out. Like I said, it's the second session. If there's other folks that have had great ideas that you want to chat with, like I said, lunch is coming on up. You'll be able to do that. If you have not seen the link for it on the session slides will be on the resources page, and then also the session survey. So that way, if there's stuff that you like or you think, hey, this really wasn't relevant, I can adjust that for the future. I love the feedback, so thank you all.